Jason did. Your call to order the regular city council meeting for today, September 2nd. If you have a cell phone or item that might ring, please put it on silent if you would, please. We'll start with the roll call, please.
Awesome.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Pittner.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here.
Hayes.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Item number 3 is the mayor's report. I will be brief. There were a number of events that I attended related to the Sentinel missile project, a meeting with Senator Hoeven and his team, the Sentinel Town Hall, a meeting with General Connor, the Air Force Global Strike A-10, who's the lead on the Sentinel deployment. I also had several constituent meetings and did a podcast, and I was out of town for the MPO board meeting, but I know they met while I was gone. And today we had a pension board meeting, primarily regarding our closed pension plan, the legacy plan. And I'm glad to say that it was a good report for the year based on strong earnings and the fact that multiple key assumptions with the actuarial computations involved with looking at how that plan is doing, those factors are holding up, and so we're in pretty good shape. Improvements year over year with that. And so with that, I'd stand for any questions that anybody has. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to section 4, which starts with the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor Janser, members of council, public. As is the norm, city manager's report is included in the agenda packet. Just want to inform council that starting next week, we are going to go ahead and start our new cadence and have the agenda packet to you 7 days in advance of the council meeting. So our next council meeting scheduled for the 15th of September. Next Monday evening, you will have that council agenda that our city clerk, Michaela, typically sends you. So I think that meets your intent of having more time to review that and meeting with staff as appropriate prior to the agenda. And then next, unless there's any questions of me, I'd like to invite Chief Fry up. At our last council meeting, we talked a little bit about the planning process for a renovation of our facility, our police department. So Chief Fry will come up, and our city engineer, Lance Meyer, will say a few words as well. We've met a few times since our meeting to make sure we're all on the same page. And with that, over to Chief Fry.
Okay. Mayor, council, thank you. As interim city manager has said, we've met several times to talk about our station rebuild. And if you want to go ahead and turn to the next screen, we met with the architect and began the process of what this would look like. And as you can see, it has a completion timeline of 2 years. So part of that, and this is just an overview of what this project will look like. But as you start to see, we're going to start with the second floor and move, and once we're done, move investigations, training, and our fitness and whatnot upstairs as part of the health and wellness. Then the next phases. So we figured that the easiest thing and the best way to do this is to look at this in phases and make sure that we're able to complete it without having to completely move out of the facility. So, before I go any further, are any questions on this part of the phases? On how we're trying to progress this along?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessing.
So I just want to make sure that I'm getting the overall picture of what we're talking about here. I believe there's two other huge factors that are not on this screen whatsoever, and that's the roof and HVAC. So how does that fit our phases? I think I'm getting, the rearrangement here, and I think we're all on board there. But are we going to talk about that as a completely separate topic, or how does that fit?
Okay, so the roof is actually covered under, because it was done a few years ago, and so it's covered under a warranty right now. So so Kevin Sickler, we're talking with him to go ahead and have that company look at the roof and the leaks and whatnot. So that should be covered. The HVAC, we have, not for sure if that's included in this yet, have a call out to the architect, but, and I wasn't able to make contact today. So, but as far as the major cost of the roof and whatnot, that should be addressed through warranty work. So that's what we know so far.
Yeah, so Alderman Blessum, Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessum, a little more detail to follow. But if I could, Chief, I'd like if our city engineer, Lance Meyer, could just talk a little bit about overall big picture process and give the example of when we renovated City Hall and kind of be able to, mirror that process a bit. Mr. Meyer?
Thank you, Mr. Interim City Manager. So just a recap of how we tackled this building. And in some ways, in some respects, it's very similar to the police department. You're going into a project where you have an end goal in mind, you're not sure on final costs, there's lots of different options to consider, and that's where, when we set this project off, we developed a process with plenty of check-in points with City Council. So what the chief has been working on and the folks in the PD have been working on is really trying to understand what are their priorities, what are their needs, what does their program need, and then how does that fit into this box that they have over there. So once they prioritize those things, and that's kind of where they're at now, is they develop a list of what they need in that building. The next step, once you get an architect on board, is to start taking that program and applying it to different areas of the building with different cost factors to it. So you start that preliminary design process, so you start getting actual estimates of what some of these things cost. And then what we did in this building is each one of these program areas, these decisions was lined out and then presented to council for sign-off, so that we didn't let the architect team get too far ahead of us on the process. So if there was decisions along the way that maybe the council didn't want to engage in or something like that, they could tell, no, we're not on board with this, but we want to move forward on these three things. Then the design team would go back and finish that process and then bring it back for council consideration. So there's always multiple check-in points where council has the final say on how this project would progress. Even further on, when we got into things like finishes around the building, our architects would give a sample or an example of what something could look like, and ultimately council was the deciding factor on what gets chosen. So I would recommend a process very similar to that for this, so that there's multiple check-in points. The budget is under control, so we can control the budget as the design progresses, and I think we'll have a good project. So just giving a little background on how we handled this building.
Mark, Mr. Mayor. If I could.
Alderman Blessing.
And whether for Tom or for Lance, so how does our contract read right now with the architects? Are we still working under the 2022 agreement? Are we still sort of letting that hold our progression moving forward? We're not doing work tied to the CIP $19 million number. Is that correct? We're letting that former contract govern right now.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, right now, the scope of what the police department's working under was a space needs analysis. In my opinion, that work is complete. And so my recommendation to them when Tom asked me to help out and get involved here a little bit was to go out for new requests for qualifications for architecture firms. And we do that all the time on our engineering projects too, where we might have a consultant study a particular problem, but then when it actually comes down to the project, we go out again for RFQs, and that was my recommendation to the police department. Now, you might get the same architect again, but it gives others a chance to compete for that work. It might bring new ideas and new team members to the table that weren't available before for the space needs analysis. So I think that's good planning on our part to do that.
Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessum, so to your point, I think as well, is the work that Chief Fry and the police department just have done with EAPC falls under the space needs process that they were doing. It's just a refresher with the new chief. And now at this point, the desire is that we would go and put a request for qualifications out to take the next step with this renovation project.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Olson.
question for Lance. So along with the RFQ for an architect, would there be engineering involved in that as well, or is that something that will be done in-house? I know for this building, we had an outside engineering firm, but how would that look?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Olson, typically what happens is we put a scope of work together. So we need an architect to design these things. Maybe there's some site improvements that are needed, et cetera. And then they put a team together. So you'll have an architect, and maybe their subconsultant is a engineering firm. They might have some interior design people that they bring on. So they bring the necessary expertise that they need to answer our request for qualifications.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Okay, I guess.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessman, I'm going to answer your question now because the architect got back to me and said that HVAC is included in this proposal. So, with no further questions on this screen, we can go to the next, please. So we start talking about what it costs, and they're looking at this at a rate of about $250 a square foot. And so admin, legal expenses, as you can see, architecture, engineering, and again, these are all proposed numbers, but as you get to the total project budget, it seems that the $13,899 is where we're sitting right about now. And I'll stand for any questions.
Alderman Blessum.
Again, not necessarily, Chief, you can certainly chime in. We're jumping to a great big number, one slide after learning anything about it. So, I guess, Tom, how do you see us laying out the priorities? I guess I would have thought going into this that, what I always thought is that we need a roof and we need to redo the HVAC and probably the electrical in the whole building. So I'm hearing HVAC's in here, so that's part of that. We're not doing the roof, which got to be a big number on a building like that. I feel like we should have seen some pretty good effects for that coming down, and I'm feeling like it's a pretty rough starting point on this number. So how do we prioritize from here and figure out what we feel we can get done?
Well, Lance, you can help me out here if you need to, but this is my, so Alderman Blessum, Mayor Janser, Alderman Blessum. Again, preliminary cost model at about $250 a square foot includes everything but the roof, right, in rough order of magnitude. But I agree, like, you got to take care of the bones first. The rest of the operational needs are obviously very important to the police department, but we have to have a facility that, does have the basic infrastructure. So, I would, my thought, and Lance, please jump in, but my thought is that's exactly what we'd put in the RFQ when we send a request for qualifications out. As we're highlighting these issues, But it starts with ensuring that we have the essential infrastructure taken care of in the facility.
Mr. Mayor, if I can continue,
Please do.
this is very similar to the same starting place we had with City Hall, where we knew we were walking into a building that was older, built in the mid-70s. HVAC system wasn't that great. Electrical panels were older. But to really take all that old stuff out and put the new stuff in, it was behind all the walls. The insulation was non-existent in this building, so we were kind of at that point where we had to start essentially from scratch and then rebuild. I think that as we get started in this preliminary engineering process, I always say engineering, but it's architecture process, this is where we start coming back to you with options, right? So maybe the base bid to fix some of these critical systems is $5 million. But alternate one that we can develop and have bid by the contractor might be to add this, and then to add this, and then to add this. And then when that project goes out for bid, ultimately it's up to council to decide, besides the base bid, what alternates they would want. So on this project here, we had 10 different bid alternates, and I think council took a handful of those, and the rest of them didn't get acted upon. So you try to build in some flexibility into these projects to fit the budget that we have available. I think one of the things that we're struggling with a little bit as a team is what is the number that we have to try to contain this scope to? Because we can write a scope for architectural services that'll eventually lead to a construction project, but if we don't know about what our number needs to be, we don't know if we're writing the appropriate scope, right? And that's why I think trying to get down to a remodel project that doesn't have any additions except for the squad garage that the chief is asking for here. But again, that can be an alternate, right? And council may decide that's not where we want to go. So as we develop this project, we can put alternates and options in there, but we have to get started first somewhere, so we can give that to you.
Continue, Alderman
If I can
Blessing.
continue, so, and Rob may jump in here too, because I think we're maybe on the same page here. So I think once again, I'm gonna ask the question, are we driving the entire process based on the outlined blue number? So we're deciding what we're paying for architecture and engineering, owner and design contingency, all of that based off what the big picture number is. So if we then, once that work is done, and I mean, it's, the contingency probably isn't that, because that's always gonna be layered, right? So that one makes sense to me, but architecture and engineering, are we paying for that at the higher level, even if we spend half of that?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessing, the way that we set up our contracts typically at the city of Minot is an hourly not to exceed contract. So, at this point in the process, because we just don't know what we don't know yet, we're probably using a percentage of an anticipated construction cost. But ultimately, if we decide not to build a project that costs $13.9 million, then the architectural fees are not going to be $777,000. But to try to build a budget, we have to look at an anticipated cost and then kind of work backwards a little bit. What the owner design contingency is as we are working through the design with you all, there's going to be things that come up that we either didn't know about. We uncovered something during the design process, like through an old as-built or an investigation, and now that changes the design some. Or if there are things that, as we're working through this process, the council wants to add, it would come from that owner design contingency. The construction contingency, where those are things that don't go quite right in the construction process, that would come later.
And just one last one then, Mark, and this is just more of a statement. The trouble where my mind goes when I get hung up in these projects is that this type of number now gets kind of pushed into the budgeting process to try to figure out what it is that we need out here in the future, which means we start charging the public for it. So when we're charging the public based on a $14 million number, which is what the mayor and the vice president of the council kind of brought forward as a $15 million number, that starts seeding what we're charging in property tax. And so I think what we've got to figure out as a council is what's our real intent here? Is this the kind of number we're thinking about, or is it half that? Because that's what's driving the property tax. And so I just want to make sure we're all grabbing that at this point rather than after October, once we've already signed off on the budget.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. And Lance, Chief, either one of you guys jump in. Jennifer, can I have you go back one slide just so I can see that slide again, please? Thank you. So in all the discussions and everything we've been having about all this, one of the things that I've never heard or seen before is the patrol squad garage. And I realize Chief is asking for it and everything, but based off what we're seeing here and the total overall project, what's the cost of that garage? Because I mean, that seems like we're building walls, structural stuff, steel. That seems like that's going to be the majority of our cost in this $13.8 million number, because if the roof is covered under maintenance or, you know what I'm trying to say? And then the other things we're looking for, maybe the elevator and the HVAC are included. That seems like a big number that's coming out of that garage spot. So, I mean, do we have an idea? Have they given you a rough breakdown on what that piece would cost?
It's roughly going to be around 2 million, they thought, somewhere in there. But when you start to look at the longevity of, again, your vehicles, what it takes, we're spending as vehicles turn over, as we start to utilize all these things. You need a garage space of some sort, and that's why we're putting it in here. It's a huge function for the department to have something similar to that. If we don't get it, I understand, but it's something that is needed. Yeah.
Any other questions? Alderman Olson.
Thank you. So we'll go back in time just a little bit when we were initially looking at whether or not we were going to rehab this building or build a new building. And I was able to sit on the committee that had months and months worth of discussion related to this. And we did have an expert in building police departments. That was his specialty across the country. It wasn't just typical construction. It was building police departments. And he was the first one that brought the idea to us of having a squad garage. And it seemed a little foreign to us because we've never had it. We like to be hardy North Dakotans and we can deal with the cold and all of that. But his rationale was the same that Chief has just shared. It keeps our equipment better, longer. It also creates situations where you're not wasting gas because you're not warming up vehicles as long. Maybe there's some a prisoner transfer, whatever it is. If you can do all those things inside, it's safer and it's more efficient. Obviously, that is something that we'll have to consider as an alternate, but just wanted to let you know that it's not something that Chief Fry is just bringing up on his own. It's certainly something that is very typical in police departments across the U.S.
And again, it is part of Phase 5. So as I look at this project, starting with the second floor and whatnot, and I understand what you're saying, Alderman Blessum, about HVAC and roofs. But clearly we've been working on trying to figure out what to do with this building for years. And it's to the point to where something has to start to move this process forward. We are at a point to where the building is functional, but that's basically about it. And so we'd love to move this project forward as opposed to delaying, because it's also where we're trying to also recruit our new folks to come to Minot and work. You also want them proud of the home that they're spending this amount of time in. So.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on. 4.2 is the city attorney's report.
Mayor, members of the council, I've submitted a written report and stand ready to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Questions for the city attorney? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll move on. Item 5 is consent items. I have been asked to pull 5.6, 5.7, and 5.10, 5.10. Are there any other items that members of the council, or for that matter, members of the audience, would like discussed individually and would like to have pulled at this time? Seeing none, what are your wishes?
Move the remaining items.
Moved and seconded to pass the remaining items as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes. All right, that takes us to item 5.6, which is the Washington SRTS contract amendment. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
There's a motion by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion. I'm not sure who pulled this. Alderman Blessing, was that you?
Thank you. Yeah, I guess just a question, and Lance, if you want to maybe answer it, or Tom, if you'd like. I just wanted to understand this contract just a little bit, because it's, you know, I guess I've been vocal about my thoughts on safe routes to school, and now we're being asked to expand the contract because we got some extra rain and some people moved some stakes around and stuff like that. So can you guys just give me a little bit of an update on how we structure these contracts and how, so in this case, does it all fall on the city? Do we just pick up the extra bill, or is it split with the contractor? How does it work out?
So, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessam, this contract's with our consultant, Moore Engineering. And so when we set up these contracts, just kind of like how I described before, we have an hourly not to exceed, which means they bill us hourly rates for their different people that are on the project, up to a maximum contract amount. And then after that, that's all they get unless the scope would change, okay? So in this case, what ends up happening is there were some residents who were pulling survey stakes out because they might not have liked the project or they're just bad actors. So then they'd have to come back and resurvey all the points for the contractor to build the project. There's a couple areas on the project that didn't quite fit in the field, so we had to do some field design with them out there. So there's some extra time for that. Sometimes what ends up happening, like in this case, when we set up these contracts, we don't know who the contractor is yet. We don't know their schedule. So we have to make some assumptions on how many hours they're going to work during the week and then how long the project's going to take. So there's some contractors that come in, they're very efficient, they get the work done, and our engineering contracts come in under. There's others where we run up right to the max contract amount because they're either working much longer days than what we had assumed in the contract when we set it up, or they're inefficient, they go past the date. I think this one went right up to the date, maybe a day or two after. So that's where the costs are coming in on this one. It's really a scope change. We've had some contracts where the engineers requested more time or more dollars. But my first question to them is, well, what changed in the scope? And if it's nothing, then sorry.
So if I, just one follow-up, Lance. So in this case, because this is a matching program, right? So the city's paying 25% or something along those lines. Do we foot this entire bill, or is this going to be split with the federal dollars that came down for this?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, the way that the Safe Routes to School program works is the federal dollars can only be used on the construction. So we have construction dollars that are coming from the feds. The city will match that. My department designs the project and does the environmental document in-house. And then we consult out the construction engineering, which is what this is, and that is all city cost.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay,
I should mention one quick thing,
Certainly.
Mr. Mayor, that we do have the dollars. They're already sitting there. We're under budget. If that question comes up.
under budget is always good. Any further discussion, questions for Lance? All right, seeing none, it appears that we should vote.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson, Hayes,
Yes.
Blessam,
No,
Fuller,
No.
Cancer.
Yes.
Motion passed.
That takes us to item 5.7, which is the 2025 sidewalk, curb, and gutter special assessments. What are your wishes?
Make a motion to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Discussion. Alderman Samuelson.
Mr. Mayor, so I asked to have this one pulled because I've had a lot of calls on the sidewalk repairs. People are frustrated with the fact that it's hard to find contractors to do it. And part of it, from what I've been told with everyone, is they have to get permits to do this, and then they have to have it inspected, and they have to wait for an inspection. Now, several of these, you go out there, and it's probably a 6-hour job. They got to wait 24 hours, possibly, for an inspection. So you're taking a 6-hour job and you're turning it into 2 days. And you're replacing a sidewalk. You're not putting new sidewalks in. I don't know why we can't make that process easier. But the biggest complaint I got was we're adding a 25% administration cost onto the cost of what it's going to cost to fix those. And I think that's wrong. So I am going to make a motion to amend this to eliminate the administration costs.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded to amend the motion to eliminate the administration cost. Discussion. Alderman Blessam.
I could. And Lance, if you could maybe just talk about this a little bit. We've had this discussion before, talking a little bit about why the administration is there. So I definitely want to hear your perspective there. Where my mind goes right away is if we've got your staff, if we've got team within the city, they're being paid their salaries regardless, right? So grabbing that piece and putting it onto this special to make sure these homeowners do it, especially in light of the concerns that Scott's bringing up about, we're making it through our processes maybe almost impossible for the homeowner themselves to get this done. We're sort of forcing them through our process. I guess in your opinion, is that? I don't want to put you on the spot. It's not meant to do that. Don't get me wrong. Are there things we could do to try to get the homeowners to take care of it? Because I think that's better for everybody, right? It's on their property. We would love it if they did. But we're hearing that that's not an easy process. So can you just kind of talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So I think, let me first start with what our requirements are to do work in the right of way. So first you have to be a licensed contractor with the city, which means you have to have a license with the state. The whole reason we do that is because sometimes there's bad contractors out there, and they will take advantage of people. And so what we do with this licensing process is make sure they're licensed and bonded and insured, so that if they go out there and they do bad work, it's not to city specs. We can call the contractor out on, there's a consequence for it. So the city could go in then and do that repair to make sure that this property owner is made whole. So that's step one. Step two, when we send out these notices, these are all complaint driven, right? So someone's been walking on the sidewalk, they notice an issue, they send it in to us. We do walk the rest of that one block, and that's been the city's policy for decades, just to make sure that there's fairness and people don't feel like they're getting picked on. Sometimes we'll find a couple tripping hazards here or there, but it's pretty rare. So most of these are complaint-driven. Now, when it comes time to sending out this notice, what we do is we generally send this out in April, and we give them until usually about middle of August to try to find a contractor and do the work. We're flexible with that. If they call and tell us, hey, I've been trying to find somebody, I can't find anybody, can I have a little bit more time? We say that's fine. But we're gonna check back in a month or two, and if you don't have anybody, then we have to proceed with this work, because we don't wanna leave safety hazards out in the public. Okay, so that's the whole reason we do this. We give them two options. They can find their own contractor, or they can hire us, and we do charge an administration fee. It's the most that we're allowed to charge at the city is 25%. So that's somewhere in state law that we've been operating under for many decades. That can be adjusted down. The finance director would be more the appropriate person to ask on do we need that 25% fee? I would argue that we do, mainly because, yes, there is a cost to us going out and doing the engineering, and yes, we do have staff on board that do that, but in my opinion, they're also doing other things that the council has asked them to do. This is kind of an added workload that we have to take care of. So the resident is supposed to take care of their sidewalk. That's state law, it's how it's written. And so when we have to do this additional work because there's a non-compliance issue, there's engineering costs and time involved in that. There's certified letters. There's fees that the finance folks had to put on there if we have to bond for some of that work. So that's where they get the number. Whether that's the right number or not, we would have to talk through that. I don't think there's any issue with that. Back to the timeline for the inspection. It really depends on the contractor and if they're making the right phone call. If they're calling a couple hours before they want concrete to show up, we might not be able to get there. Generally speaking, if they call us a half a day's notice, we can be there that day. We can shift work around to get there. And we don't watch them pour the concrete. We get there, we check their forms, we make sure the cross slope's ADA compliant, we make sure that they have the proper gravel, concrete depth, those sort of things, and we're out of there. We're back to doing something different. So we just don't have the time to stand there all day and watch them do the work. We'll come back usually the next day, make sure that it's either tooled or saw cut so that you don't have uncontrolled cracking. And that's kind of the extent of our inspection. Now, if there's some that aren't getting that kind of service, we want to know about that so we can find what the issue is. But generally speaking, we can be there pretty quickly if someone notifies us. With our online permitting now, you can schedule inspections ahead of time, but we always have a phone available if someone wants to call in.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. Lance, I guess kind of under some of Scott's concerns, so how many flat work contractors do we roughly have in the city of Minot? Just rough numbers, I don't even know. Handful, maybe?
It's actually increasing, Alderman Fuller. We've had several new companies become licensed here in the last year or two.
Okay.
Before, it was probably only a handful, but we are seeing a lot of new contractors now, which is
Okay.
good.
I guess my question would be, so these guys that are contracting, doing, I know Flores is doing city work, he's doing the safe street, or the sidewalks for the city of Minot, and I don't know what the other contractors are doing, but the summertime, when they're out there, that's when they're gonna make their most money. And we're asking them to set aside some of their bigger projects to go do one little square at somebody's house. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, are we giving the homeowners enough time in a 3-month period, knowing that the people that are gonna come do this work are all honestly doing other work during the building season in the summer? So I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's a way we can expand that, and rather than the 3 to 4 months that we give them to get it done before we say, hey, we're going to take it on and charge you to do it ourselves.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, so first we bid out this project every year, right? And so we put a timeline on that contract that says you're not going to get a list of sidewalks repaired from us until it's usually after this council date. So they know not to expect any of that work before about September 1st. And then usually the completion date is somewhere towards the end of October. So whoever bids on that contract knows that there's a process that we have to go through, and they're not going to be able to have this work until that process is complete. Now, in addition, they also have the rest of the sidewalk, curb and gutter project, right? So there's different phases in this contract that we let. So there's about $400,000 in sidewalk, curb and gutter repairs throughout the city that we tell them, you go fix these things. This last segment doesn't come to you until about September. So from us like pulling work away from others, I wouldn't be worried about that because they bid this work knowing that this is what the schedule is. As far as extra time for the homeowners, I'll tell you, they will take as long as we give them generally. And so that's why we try to be flexible with them, reminding them that the whole reason we're doing this is because of public safety, right? And so if we gave them a whole year to get it done, that's a whole year that safety issue is out there. If they have a legitimate reason, and sometimes that happens, we worked with airmen that are deployed. They're having a hard time trying to find somebody and coordinate that back home. We help them with that. As long as we have somebody that's responsive and trying to make an effort, we're going to work with them.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessam.
And actually, maybe a question for Dave, if you wouldn't mind. I'd kind of like to just talk about the dollars for just a moment. One of the things we want to think about here, what we're doing is we're providing financing. So, we're giving them 10 years to pay this on their specials. I think that's the way these are laid out. The 25%, if you had to stick that on a credit card, you're maybe not even all that worse off. If you had to do it that way. So can you just, as Lance said, can you just give us a little bit of the fiscal perspective on this, why this is the method and how this kind of works for the homeowner?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, there's a lot of variables that come into play here. So I don't know that we are anticipating issuing any other debt this year other than these special assessments. So we still have to go through that process with the rating agency to get a bond rating and all of that work for a relatively small bond issuance as well. So when we don't have as much debt to spread those issuance costs over, it can really add up as a percentage of a relatively small issuance as well. And then that administration cost covers our staff time. We have to prepare for the rating agency and go through that process. We have to have the financial advisor review all of this. We can go to market. So there is some cost to the city as well, not just in staff time, but other costs that we'd have to pay as well.
So if I can continue. So Dave, in this, is there any amount that you would advise that, use reserves because we don't want to go through all that? If rates are high enough, do we make that decision? I mean, really, we're being the bank here, right? We're providing the financings to make sure that the person who owns the property has the funds available to actually get it done. We pay the contractor, we're getting it done. So are we required to bond it? Do we have parameters for when we would bond it or versus paying it just up front? How do we go about that?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessam, we are not required to bond it. The issue we have then is a little bit of equity. If we had a lot of this work that was going on and we issued bonds to cover it, we pass through the interest costs as well. So if we fund it out of pocket, would we charge an interest cost? Because we would forego earning any interest on the money that we would have paid the contractor too. So it becomes a little bit of an issue of equity then as well for other special assessments that the city carries.
Okay. Alderman Fuller.
Sorry, Dave, I just got to ask you real quick, how much interest would we be gaining on this? Like, we're not drawing huge interest at the bank, right? We're just covering our spend basically and coming out even. So we're not collecting a lot of interest, are we?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, so typically when we bond for these, we pass through the interest costs, and the city can also mark up the cost of the interest, and the rationale behind that is to cover any delinquencies when the specials aren't paid on time. So we'd have a little bit of money that accumulates to cover those delinquencies so that we're not out of pocket for those costs. Now, like we said, this is a relatively small special assessment project. I think it was about $75,000. So some of these special assessment projects that we get into are millions of dollars that we definitely have to finance. So again, it becomes an equity. Where do we draw the line from one case to the next?
If I could just a
Alderman
final-
Samuelson.
my biggest frustration kind of on this, and it isn't towards you, Dave, but one of the things, if you, and this is on average, this is $578, just the 25% administration cost on each resident. That's an average. I know that's not what it's gonna be, but on average, that's what it is. And it's $2,900 on average total to do that. And I guess my point being is, I think that we need to really look at how we're doing this. The inspection part kind of bothers me a little bit, and I do inspections for a living. And in the construction world, if somebody calls me 24 hours notice, it might rain. So they're not going to be able to have that inspection done. And I have to go somewhere else. And I don't work in the city of Minot. I travel all over, sometimes 200 miles a day. Well, if they call me 24 hours when it's ready, I probably can't get there because I've made some other ones. I have to have some trust in the guys that I'm dealing with. In my field, we do use pictures and videos. It's kind of frustrating that it almost seems like we have the list of licensed contractors. They're licensed for a reason. I deal with master plumbers. They have to take a test. They're master plumbers, journeyman plumbers. They're all licensed. We have to have a little bit more trust in what they do. And I don't want to put this as a minimum, but it's a sidewalk. I know these guys can put in sidewalks. That's my point here. It's a sidewalk, and we're replacing it. We're not putting new in the neighborhood. I get all that. We're replacing a section of someone's sidewalk. It's got to meet up with the sidewalk on each side of it. It's frustrating that we can't make it easier. And then, we talk about that it is in state law that we can do this. And it's in state law that we can charge 25% administration fees. But does that mean we have to? How I see it is it's part of the city's job, is what the legislature has put on us, that we do this. And the people that are doing the job, the inspectors, the engineering, finance, they're getting paid to do those things. And our property owners are paying property tax. And now we're going to add another 25%. I just have a hard time with that.
Alderman Hayes.
I know with sidewalk permits that are taken out, and I've taken out several this year, isn't there a fee involved with those sidewalk permits for inspections? And what does that cover?
Right, so there's two different things we're talking about here then. Alderman Hayes, this is for the special assessment, so this is a different process. But if a builder or a person takes out like a new build, they have to put in sidewalk or a driveway, then we charge a permit fee for that. That's $80.
On these new rebuilds?
Correct.
Correct.
Well, for new construction. For what we're talking about right here, for the sidewalk assessments.
Yep.
There's no permit for that because it's our contractor performing that work.
I took out a permit to replace a city notice, to replace a section of sidewalk, and it cost me the $80.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's for the inspections.
Yes.
So the overhead is over and above the inspections.
That is the city's cost per performing that inspection, just like a building permit fee for the inspection department. They charge that to recoup that cost, and then we charged $80 for that inspection.
Okay, an example that the homeowners are faced with is this particular sidewalk was of my daughter's. They show up, contractor shows up, the sidewalk needs to be pulled, well, there's big tree roots underneath there. It's got to be cut out and dug and ready to meet city standards. $100 a square foot versus $10 that we pay normally. Contractors I can tell you from experience, they do not are not willing to come and do small homeowner projects. I've dealt with Flores, I've dealt with several companies in town that did work for us. They do not come and do little tiny projects like that. I had to beg my own concrete guy to come and do this for me on a project. And the cost was 10 times more than what it should have been. And for no reason. So the homeowner's already paying for it that way. Now they're getting hit for 25%. I agree, if the homeowner's being unreasonable and not wanting to cooperate, by all means, let the city replace it. If they're cooperative, just can't get a hold of anybody, I dare the city to try and call a contractor, Joe Blow, and get somebody out to do a little project. You won't get it done. And the farther it gets into the fall, the prices go up because they're gonna take the highest bidder. Because they're at the end of their season. So, thank you.
Alderman Blessum.
And just one thing to add there, you know, I think Lance was talking a little bit about, you know, there is extra work here. We've got city staff, you know, running around trying to meet these needs, and that's all a good thing. But I think just for the public's thoughts here, we're not giving bonuses to the staff that are working harder. You know, we need to make sure we're taking care of them. That's our process that we go through as we do raises, and we do everything that else goes with that. So really what this comes down to is it's meant to pad the coffers of the city. Now, keep in mind, that's offsetting what we've got to go and charge in property tax. That's straightforward, right? So if we remove this 25% and make that the going forward rate, Dave's got to come back and tell us what that means in our budget, because that is what this is. So this isn't for me just a slam dunk, oh yeah, remove it, we're treating people bad. There's a trade-off that goes along with it. And I think what we've got to get to is, I don't ever like to sit up here and feel like we are taking advantage is even a strong word, because I'm not suggesting that. I don't like to feel like we're making a profit. I've used that word a lot, right? I don't want this to be, while we operate this thing because it brings in a bunch of extra money, the $80 fees for permits would seem to want to cover this in the first place. And if that should be $115 to offset what these need to be to make sure that we're covering that, that might be an approach that might make more sense to me, because now you're actually tying that fee right to where it's happening. So I think for me, I have a hard time saying, wow, this is the one where I want to remove the 25%, but this is a really good discussion. We got to figure this out, because it feels like, based on what Alderman Hayes is talking about, we're forcing a bunch of people through a process that results in them paying more for what they're getting because the city's administering it. And that doesn't feel great to me.
Okay. We have an amendment on the motion, which is to remove the administrative costs and have the city cover them. Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, let's vote on the amendment.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Blessum.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Ganser.
No.
Olson.
No.
Pittner.
No.
Motion passes to amend.
Okay, we're back on the original motion as amended. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, let's vote.
Fuller.
Yes.
Ganser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Blessum.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay, motion passed. That takes us to item 5.10, which is the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Phase RC-1 Mouse River Park Bridge Replacement. What are your wishes?
Move
Make a
approval.
motion to approve. Or second, whichever.
Okay, well, I think Alderman Olson beat you. Alderman Olson made the motion. Alderman Fuller seconded. Discussion. Alderman Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked for this one to be pulled. Again, every time something flood-related comes up, I want to sit here and talk about it, because over the last 15 years, I'm still surprised that we've never had anybody say, should we be spending this much money on flood control? But I want to talk about this bridge. This is the second bridge in a community outside of Minot now we're going to replace. Our local share cost for this bridge is $2.68 million of our tax dollars that we're going to go to replace a bridge at Mouse River Park, okay? there's 6 to 8 people that actually live in and around Mouse River Park. Now, everybody tells us that we're gonna get paid back for these bridges that we're replacing by the sales tax dollars that are coming into our community from the peoples out of these other communities. So, for them to replace our $2.68 million, they have to spend $268 million in the city of Minot at a 1% sales tax replacement over the next, let's just use 10 years, okay? So 8 people aren't gonna be able to do that live in and around Mouse Park. So let's take the 2 largest towns around there, which are Tully and Mohall. Add the 8 people to that, you have 740 people roughly that are gonna be repaying back the $2.68 million to us over whatever period of time. Now, if you break that out, that's $365,000 a person over the next 10 years. So I'm gonna have to call my cousin in Tully and tell him that he has to spend $36,500 a year in Minot on things that aren't food and cars and stuff like that, because those things aren't taxed. So I get that we have to be a good community partner. I get that we have to take care of these communities around us, but we're being sold a bill of goods that says we're gonna get paid back, and we're not. We're gonna spend $2.68 million of our tax money to replace a bridge at Mouse River Park, and we will never get paid back for it. That's not just wrong, it's inappropriate. We have different needs and different things that we should be spending money on right now. Number one, figuring out how to fund our fire and PD. But I just wanted to point that out for everybody, because when they tell us, oh, we're gonna get paid back, again, go back to the Velva Bridge. I believe our cost on that one was $23 million. So divide that by 1%. That's $2.3 billion that they have to spend in the city of Minot to make up our sales tax that we put in, our dollars. That isn't happening. So I just wanted to put that out there for everybody. I won't be voting for this.
Further discussion, Alderman Blessing.
If I could. Actually, I saw one bright spot in this, and that's that it came in underneath engineer's estimate, which is good news. I share a lot of the concerns that Rob has. The only difference I think I have in my thinking is that all of the minutia around the sales tax dollars and how they spend and how they flow and all that is really all the discussion that comes around the state dollars that are flooding in to help us take care of this. At the end of the day, that in and of itself is the agreement we have with the legislature. And in order for Minot to get the 65% that we need, we've got to supply the 35% for the other communities around us. Whether I like that or I don't, I think we've got to support it at this point, because that's where the primary funding is coming from. So as much heartburn as it gives me to spend the money there, I'll vote yes, because it's the agreement we have with the state.
Further discussion? Seeing none, it's time to vote. Please call the roll.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson,
No.
Hayes,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
No.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion passed.
All right, that completes our consent items. We are moving on to the action items, section 6. And item 6.1 is the city manager recruitment update. And so the recommendation is that the mayor, council president, and HR director review the applications and give the human resources director a list of up to 10 applicants to contact, that we direct the human resource director to do an initial screening and confirm continued interest, and that we direct the human resource director to bring an item to the September 15th, 2025 regular city council meeting with the top 3 applicants. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Alderman Olson.
Question for our HR director. I know it was stated in the memo, but I just want to make sure that we're talking about it in public as well, because we've had different ways of interviewing and hiring our city managers. And the last time that we hired a city manager, the entire council was part of that interview process. It looks like that's the way that you were trying to direct that as well, but just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Alderman Olson. The intention is that I've narrowed it down to the qualified applicants. I'd like the president of the council and the mayor to look through them. I can do an initial phone screen, and from there, we would bring in the top 3 to meet with all of city council. I really enjoyed the meet and greet that we did when we elected the chief as well. I think that would be an important integral part of this process.
All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, Alderman Blessam.
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Kelly, to Alderwoman Olson's point, is there anything in point number 1 here, which is really the mayor and myself as the council president working with you to whittle that list down? Do you see any potential for us losing something in that process? Because again, I wouldn't be opposed to having the full council look at whatever that initial list is. Do we lose something there that we could get from the rest of the council?
Once we bring it out to the full council, it would be considered open record because everybody would be called into a meeting and falls under open record law. So it would be up to your preference of how you want to do that.
And just to clarify that, and the city
Continue.
attorney can tell us that means the fact that somebody put in an application is public record. You know, if it's somebody in another city, as we saw with ours, it's immediately public record. The way that this lays out, the only public records would be for the 3 that are presented to the entire council. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that's exactly what happened with Mr. Stewart when when his position as a finalist was made public by the city there, then it was out in the open.
Yes, that's accurate.
Any further questions or discussion with the Human Resources Director? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Any further discussion by the council? Seeing none, we'll call the roll. Go ahead.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson, Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Next item is 6.2. This is the Wayfinding Entry Monument Design and Contract Amendment. What are your wishes?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessam.
I'm going to move, number 1, I'd like us to split this apart into entryway versus parking, but I'm going to move alternative 1 on entryway monuments.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for alternative 1. And do you want to state what that is so that everybody
Absolutely.
here knows?
Yeah,
what
so
we're
we
talking
have,
about?
in the city of Minot, we have 5 entryway monuments, and I think those of you that are on social media, you've seen pictures of those. They're actually fabulous. They've been around a little while. They're I think, granite and stainless steel. And what option 1 does is it leaves the signs as is. And as we get further into the discussion, I'll talk a little bit more about my thoughts on that. But I believe those monuments are serving us well and look great. And I don't see it as advantageous right now for us to spend the money to change those.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second for alternative 1. Call the roll.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes. Okay, now, I believe that takes care of the monuments. Now we're on to the other piece of it, correct? Do you have a motion to follow up with that then, Alderman Blessam?
Yes, please. So in the alternatives we don't really have what I would like to see. So alternative 1, do nothing, leave signs as is. As far as I could tell, and I drove around them today and took a look, we have no signage today, right? So leaving them as is doesn't do us any good. But I guess the question that I have for my colleagues is, what is our intent in putting up parking signs? Again, back to my thing, I don't know that it's, for me at least, it's not exactly driving people to drive into them to give us money. I think we want to make downtown function. I think that's really important. And if that's a part of that strategy, I think that makes sense. And if putting signage up, I think that makes sense. Now, the process that we've got laid out for us with alternatives 2 and 3, I'm not a fan of. I think we're putting a lot of effort into something that I would normally call one of my local contractors to take a look at. In fact, we're making changes in our office. We called a local contractor to come and change the signage on our front window. I look at a project like this as that, not $18,000 for administration plus $5,000 to $17,000 per sign. How do we just have a contractor come make some parking signs for us? So Mr. Mayor, I guess my question would be, and maybe for the city attorney, I don't know that I have an exact motion that I want to bring there because I don't have any information. I don't like any of these 3 alternatives. I would like us to do something so that people know that they can park there, but I don't like what we would need to spend in 2 or 3, and I don't like doing number 1. So how do can I make a motion to direct staff to get quotes for signage?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's my motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Alderman Fuller?
Can I make a request, Mike? So if we're going to do that, right, I don't think we need to have an engineer or an architect design any signs for us, right? I mean, to that point, I think we need to go to the sign guys and say, hey, this is what we want to put up there. What will it cost us? Now, and the reason I'm asking that is because I had those sign guys, my sign guys sitting right here, develop and build 2 signs for me. Didn't charge me an exorbitant amount of money to design them because that's part of the process of them making the sign. They lay it out, they do everything. So if we're going to do that, which I'm completely fine with, I just want to make sure we're not adding in a bunch of extra fees and architecture and engineering stuff. Like when we go do your motion, it's to just go talk to the sign guy. Tell us what this costs us.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could, and for staff or Dave or somebody, do we have state law contractual obligations here and how we go about getting bids to put signs on the parking garages? Because this is where I got tripped up before, and so I just want to make sure, can we just say, hey, we'd like some nice looking parking signs and send it out to the local guys?
So that's going to depend on the cost. Alderman Blessum, members of the council. So some of the procurement stuff is all driven by the exorbitancy of what that is. And if it is something that, like a sign that looks kind of what was presented here, something that's going to be hanging off the side of the building, sometimes there are architectural engineering costs to consider, like the weight of the sign and can the building support something of that nature. If it's something that's just painted on, I mean, that would be something that I'd have to defer to staff on as to what like that type of a service would typically cost.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could, again, sort of to Alderman Fuller's point, when he got a sign made, or if I get one made for the building that we own, I'm not going to go to an architect or an engineer. I'm going to call the sign guys. I mean, and they're going to ensure that it meets those requirements. But again, is there something in state law or ordinance that forces us to have those checkoffs? Because my assumption would be if there's any worry with that, they take care of that when they build me a sign to go on my property, right? They would have to make sure they're meeting ordinance and state law.
And I think that conversation would likely be had between the engineers, whoever's doing the procurement with this, if that would become a concern.
City engineer.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, the answer is no. For this estimated price, we do not have a requirement for an engineer. I think the part of the question was in developing this was what type of sign do we all want to see? Because there's all kinds of different signs, right, out there. We've all seen them, different ones that say parking on it. It could be as simple as getting some sheet metal, have it say parking, and tack it onto the building. But I think if you start getting more advanced and you have maybe a blade sign that has to physically attach to the building, then there's things that we have to take into account, like wind load, the weight of the sign, how does it attach to the building. So the level of complexity can increase depending on what council wants to see. But if the direction is to go get quotes, and we want to keep it simple, and we'd have one that just says parking, that's pretty easy to do.
And that, Mr. Mayor, that is the motion. So
Okay, so you just want a flat sign against the building that says parking?
when I drive by it, I want to be able to see a parking sign on it so people know that that's where you park. I mean, it's as simple as that, and it doesn't have to be very extravagant.
Alderman Fuller, do you have something further?
The only other thing I was gonna say to this is I just want everybody to look at this. Where is this money coming from that we were proposing? It was $143,000 to $275,000. Those are economic development monies. Those are sales tax dollars that we pulled out, and we don't have a bucket to put them in, so now we're trying to find ways to spend this money. And instead of doing it on a relatively inexpensive $5,000 sign or something like that, we wanted to spend $143,000 to $275,000. That's where I keep going back to our sales. If we have that kind of money laying around that we have to find a way to spend it, let's give it to fire or PD, and they can go buy their bunkers or protective equipment or something else. But again, here we are, sales tax dollars being used for signs.
Further discussion? Alderman Olson?
Oh, thank you. I will add in other cities that I have visited, particularly if you're not from that community, you're looking for parking ramps, you're looking for a sign that is projecting outside of the building. A lot of times, it's a P in a circle, and people understand that that means parking. So it's not an extravagant sign, but it is visible as you are driving towards it. You can only see the flat sign when you're right in front of it and possibly have already passed by. So just based on what other communities do, larger cities in particular, it is going to be something that is coming out from the building so that you can see it from a half a block away.
Alderman Pittner?
Yeah, and again, to that point, or to any of these points, yes, dude, being as cost effective as possible. We're gonna go to the horse's mouth. We're gonna talk to the sign guys. I'd like to see a couple of different alternatives. It's gonna be at minimal cost for them to, same thing when I put on my business. I sent in my proof of concept on a piece of paper and sent me back a few different designs. Honestly, I don't think there was any, it's probably built into the cost that they end up paying. But again, it's minimal. And to Lisa's point, it's a P with a circle on it. What can you do? You know, can it be a blade sign? Can it be backlit? Is it just a piece of metal a blade sign in a piece of metal form? So again, I would expect there to be some level of alternatives that we can pick from with this. But again,
Okay. Further discussion? Everybody clear on the motion? Call the roll?
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson. Yes. Pittner.
yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Moving on to 6.3. 6.3 is an ordinance modification related to Chapter 31, Section 152 of the storm sewer fees. There's a recommendation included to pass the ordinance change. What are your wishes?
Make a motion to approve.
Move by Alderman Fuller. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Samuelson. Any discussion? Any discussion? This is a matter that came up a number of meetings ago related to folks on the property owners on the outskirts of town who have a little different circumstances with sewer than some of the other citizens within the city that are property owners there. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes?
Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Blessam.
Yes.
Motion passed.
That brings us to 6.4, which is the national opioid settlements with the Purdue Company, Sackler family, and other opioid manufacturers. The decision is, should we participate in these settlements? What are your wishes?
I move that we would participate.
Move to participate. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Hayes. Discussion. City Attorney.
And just a brief overview, this is very similar to the other opioid settlement that we participate in. There's new settlements that have been reached in this class action. A subdivision that doesn't participate can't directly share in any of the settlement funds, and as state law currently operates in regard to opioid settlement funds, these actually flow through over to First District Health Unit, and those funds are used to remediate the opioid crisis in the community. My understanding is a lot of those funds are used to provide counseling in the Ward County Jail and to buy Narcan. So that's how this would operate if approved by the council here tonight.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any further discussion? I see none, so please call the roll.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes. Blessam.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes. Item 6.5 is a contract for the Airport General Aviation HVAC upgrade assessment. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Olson, seconded by Alderman Pittner. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, let's call the roll.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Blessam.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion passed.
On to item 6.6. This is the Third Street Bridge repair, additional project scope for Pier number 4. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Blessam,
Second.
second by Alderman Samuelson. Any discussion? For the public, this is, we are having Pier 3 replaced. The contractor will be on site. Pier 4 has similar spalling and problems with the bearing on the bridge, and this would allow us to have that contractor try to figure out what we can do with Pier 4. So it's the same bridge, that Third Street Bridge. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Blessam.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item 6.7 is the approval, acceptance of the Military Installation Readiness Grant from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. This is a grant that was applied for after meetings with OLDCC, and we are hopeful of receiving these funds for military readiness related to preparation for the Sentinel project and some joint land use study work that will be funded by this. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
It's moved by Alderman Olson,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Blessam. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Olson.
Yes.
Pittner.
Yes.
Samuelson.
Yes.
Hayes.
Yes.
Blessam.
Yes.
Fuller.
Yes.
Janser.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We are now to item number 7, which is our personal appearances section. We have guidelines for personal appearances, which are on the table there. You should fill out, if you wish to appear, you should fill out a speaker's card, which includes your name, address, and the topic that you wish to speak about. Each individual who speaks will be allotted 5 minutes to make comments, and the individual will be noticed when their 5 minutes have expired. The 5-minute time limit may be extended by a majority vote of the City Council. All comments must address the topic identified on the speaker's card. must be pertinent to the city of Minot and fall under the authority of the city council, and must be directed to the council as a whole. Comments may not be defamatory, abusive, harassing, or unlawful, may not include information that is exempt or confidential under North Dakota Open Records Law, and may not interfere with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Individuals will not have access to the city's audio and visual technology unless their material is submitted in advance, and individuals may not yield their allotted time to another individual. With that, we have our first speaker, who is Billy Gunderson.
When I address ADA requirements and accessibility, I do it because the city of Minot is failing. Leaders in the city of Minot are failing. For me, it's Psalm 8. There are constant reminders that civil rights are not paramount in the city of Minot. I came in here and I see a podium and I see a table to the right. It reminds me of the photo that I shared of the fountain that says white above and a simplified fountain that says colored above. With the title Barriers, 1920s to 1950s. It's 75 years later. When I did use the podium to need the AVA cable, I could not see all council members. I wonder if it was the need I had, if the need has been removed to remove me from needing the podium. I cannot see all council members from here. Perhaps it was when I shared Caged Bird by Maya Angelou that sparked the need to remove public access to the AVA cable. Due to my disability, I struggled finding my own words for that meeting. So I honored a Black poet to help me to honor civil rights in a chamber that honors the arts. The policy changes set to start August 4th were not searchable by the phrases personal appearances or public comments prior to the meeting. After the meeting, the city clerk shuffled through documents on the table to the right of the podium to find the new policy documents to show me. How does a policy change exist for the city but is not searchable on the city website by the key phrases in order to be findable? I was kept from using photos at that meeting. The documents were not clear about being able to use photos on Steve Padragula, as Steve Padragula asked questions from the new policy documents provided 8/18. Mike Blessum clarified that the photos have to be submitted for approval, that he just did not want someone plugging in and broadcasting. This was not in the document. To know freedom before being paralyzed and to know life now with ADA requirements not being met for safety and equal access and enjoyment is being caged. It is not because there are no federal laws and codes for ADA requirements. It is because they are not being enforced by the city and its leaders. The city engineer, Lance Mayer, said $600,000 was saved from sidewalks and ADA curb cuts that went to mill and overlay work. That was fast. Last Friday, a friend from church asked if I was going to Citizens Alley. I said no, that I will likely never go. I told him that it is not safe for me and that it does not meet ADA requirements, that it's difficult getting in and out of the bathroom. A change right in Ackerman, the owner and engineer, said would take 15 seconds to fix July 10th. It is not fixed. My friend said I could go home and use mine. He said ADA requirements are not in the Bible, but being salt and light is. He said, come be salt and light. I addressed the unsafe exit route and fire safety. I gave this more thought as I passed by later Friday evening, thinking about the shooting in Minneapolis. I told him that it was not safe in the same way that the flood and construction routes for wheelchair users that I travel to get to Roosevelt Park are not and do not meet ADA requirements. I told him Ryan Ackerman is the administrator for RSJB that oversees the flood wall project and those routes. He said I could move to a place that is easier to live. Minot is my home. I will be salt and light here. He also said that they were good people. ADA requirements are my life here. They are how I travel the city and how I enjoy what God provides, to be outside, under the sky. I'm very concerned about the direction that the city of Minot continues to move forward on ADA requirements. Thank you.
The next speaker is Josiah Royce.
Good evening, everyone. City of Minot, members of City Council. Today I'm talking about election laws and election integrity. A few concerning points I need to bring up. Like I said to you guys last time, it's been a concern of mine for years. I worked with a election integrity team on a petition some years ago to get rid of the voting machines, as they are not trustworthy. And there's only several multi-million-dollar investigations and documentaries that can back that up much better than I can in 4.5 minutes. But before I move on to some of the other notes about it, I just wanted to point out something that was in the Dinesh D'Souza documentary film titled Vindicating Trump. And that is, when it comes to the votes, you would not believe this. So there's like 100,000 laws in the United States. And some have heard me say this before, but for anybody here that claims to be a law-abiding citizen, do you actually know that you're not in violation of any of 100,000 laws? I don't think anybody could make that claim. Unless you can tell me what all those 100,000 are, I'll wait. While you think about that, you're not going to believe this. Counterfeiting a ballot is legal in most states. We haven't bothered to make a law against that. Isn't that weird? Now, it says most states. I don't know. They didn't list which ones in that documentary have made it legal. I don't know if North Dakota is one of them or not. That's tomorrow's research for me. Beyond that, just to kind of explain how that can work, you can buy them from the same manufacturer, the same company that the city or the state buys them from, copy them, download them as an absentee ballot, make as many as you want, as many as are desired. If that's not sketchy, I don't know what is. Furthermore, moving on, or moving within, I addressed some issues last time that we ran into in this most recent election. Erroneous count. You'll find that under section 16.1-06-05 of the North Dakota Century Code. Now, I had multiple witnesses turn in sworn affidavits, myself included, regarding anomalies of the machines, and they're all but ignored, completely ignored. Now, the people, and to credit Billy's point about civil rights and liberties being washed away, I myself as a candidate had a little extra motivation to do all this digging and to try and present these sworn affidavits. And if I get slapped away and rejected like that, how ambitious do you think everybody else is to take their time, to spend their own time and money and everything to look into this when it's the job of the government to do this? When we call you guys to hold you accountable and you slap it away and you ignore the law, that's concerning. Who do I call about that? Who do I call? I talked to the Secretary of State's office, the county auditor, and the poll workers on that day. They all told me the same thing. That didn't happen. You didn't see that. Nobody saw that. That didn't happen. Very, very concerning. So I even went and requested open records request for the voter roll, logic and accuracy tests, and I was told I couldn't have that either. Are these public elections? Is this anything to do to serve the public? Elected officials are public servants, but I'm being denied even the most basic evidence. And if there's nothing fishy here, I mean, if you guys have ever played poker, If you think about a poker game and I tell you I got a full house, and then you say, well, I got a royal flush, you lose. Well, let me see your cards. Nope, not in a million years. Well, I don't feel too inclined to give you my money anymore. So, all this wrapping around how difficult it is to follow the law. I mentioned 100,000 laws earlier. And tonight, I would only ask you guys to follow and look at a few. Running out of time, but Century Code 40-08-08, you cannot get this messed up. It very blatantly spells out. I turned in petitions an hour before you guys appointed someone. They were turned in full, 427 count. It says the council shall call a special election to fill a vacancy. Now, the reason the law is laid out the way it is, it even says before 4 p.m., which I did. We turned them in. The people have spoken. The people want an election. The people's voice is being suppressed. It is not lawful to hold and keep an appointment beyond this point. We need to have a special election. It's been petitioned for. The law is here. The law is clear. I'm asking you all to follow and obey the law. That's what got me into this whole mess. That's what got me to run for mayor, is rooting out corruption and standing on the Constitution of law. Thank you. And have a good night. I'll keep this.
I have no additional speaker cards. I would maybe ask the city attorney to, based on that those last comments, I'd maybe ask the city attorney to clarify her interpretation of the Century Code with regard to the council either appointing a member to fill a vacancy or calling a special election.
Yes, so to that end, I would direct Mr. Royce to the council memo that was on the last city council meeting that kind of broke down the various areas of law that we analyzed, and specifically directing his attention to the modern council language that's in Century Code. It states that it's in the purview of the council to select its individual that it wants to fill the vacancy. The language about a petition is specifically omitted from that particular section of the Century Code. So if you go and review that memo, that would be my recommendation.
If I may, state law still supersedes municipal code.
I'm citing to state law, so please review the memo. There's state law that's cited within that memo.
No memo that this city council can decide is going to change the state law.
And that is fine. You take that to the council, your attorney that you wish to take that to, but that is not the advice that I am giving this council. This council has the authority to call its election if it wishes to, and it is elected to appoint a member that applied for the seat.
Are you implying that I have an attorney or implying that I need one?
I'll leave that up to you to decide.
Would anybody on the council like to review the highlighted section?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessing.
Josiah, what we're talking about here is the difference in Century Code between two different forms of government. You're citing a form of government that we are not. I agree with you that that is in Century Code in the section you're looking at. We are not that type of government. We are a different type of government. That's what the city attorney is referring to. Please review that form of government and the language there, because I had this same concern and this same question when we were working through the canvassing for the election. So I would ask you to go and check that section of Century Code, because they are two separate things. We are a modern council, is that correct? That is different than a city council model. Those are two separate things.
The AI source I used across multiple different AI sources specifically looked at it as a modern council thing. And I reviewed the Century Code the old-fashioned way by paper, but then I had other friends, other help that were looking into it using AI for Minot specifically set up as a modern council. So, I mean, this is a very serious matter, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, sir.
I agree completely. It's a very serious matter. And I will tell you that if I'm being advised wrong, then we will deal with that.
Very good.
But my understanding of Century Code through my reading, as well as the work that I've done with the city attorney, leads me to believe that, again, there's still a question that's open as to whether it's advisable for us to hold a special election. That's a different question, and actually, we had this discussion during our 4 p.m. meeting before you arrived about whether it mattered that the petitions were turned in by any point in time, because under the law, they're not required. So there is no 4 p.m. time frame. There's nothing related to that in the modern form of government that we are. So we can still take it under advisement that there is a petition that's been submitted, but that's all it is. It's advisement.
And for the record, it was submitted before the meeting today.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter.
Oh, I hear. I was just, I think when you worded it, you said before I arrived, and I was saying the meeting was actually after I arrived because I turned it in at between 3 and 4 o'clock. And the meeting, if I'm not mistaken, began at 4. So just for the record, I'm not saying that you were saying something else. Just want to be clear.
And so to be clear, there are again, you've talked a lot about election integrity and a lot of different things. And I will put my record in this state on election integrity up against anyone's. Okay, in 2020, I had 2 bills. 2021, I had 2 bills. 2023, I had 2 election integrity bills. I have fought tooth and nail for every single one of these. Believe me, if there was a problem that I thought had occurred, I would be all over it. This very specific question that our city attorney has been asked and it has been answered, I am comfortable with. And I'm going to continue to move forward with that because it is in the purview of the council to make this decision. Now, we have not had a discussion. The appointment that we made of Mr. Hayes in the 4 o'clock meeting this afternoon is a step. We still, tonight, if we chose to, could bring a motion to do a special election in December, and he would serve until that election occurred. I will tell you in front of everybody here that that's not my intent, because we've already taken the circus as far as it needs to go at this point. Okay? The direction that we should have had from the beginning is we should have let the mayor's appointment go through and hold an election for this open seat.
In your opinion, but the circus you're referring to is the will of the people, is the voice of the people. Don't forget that.
It is the voice of a set of people, absolutely. There's no question about that. It is the voice of a set of people. I cannot.
I'm just reminding you that when you call it a circus, that could be deemed kind of offensive to some.
I don't see that as offensive because it's not the will of the people that created the circus. It's the circumstances that led us through the process that we've had. And at this point, we are moving forward now with a full council that's going to work, and it's going to take care of the needs of the city as we go forward. There's an election coming in June, and there will be 4 open seats, including the mayor's seat again. And so there's an ample opportunity for anybody that's interested to do it. I cannot see us spending another $18,000 or whatever it will be to hold another election in December for someone to serve for 5 months. I think it's a bad path.
It depends on numerous factors of which we don't need to discuss here, but I will say that, as I've said for years, if you eat enough apple, you get to the core, you got to be willing to take the bites. So on that, with the argument you've presented, I say let's get chewing. Thank you for your discussion.
Okay, we're moving on. We're in Section 8, and Section 8.1 is the Alcohol Ordinance Review and Rewrite Committee recommendations. What are your wishes? This is a discussion of the recommendations that came out of the Alcohol Ordinance Review Committee. City Clerk?
So staff was directed to bring this item back for the September 2nd meeting. Alderman Blessum, I rewatched the meeting and I know that you had asked for it to be a public hearing. Staff thought the next step should be to see if the council would be fine with directing us to split it. We feel like the license cap is a huge issue. And if we don't split it, we won't get the attention on the other changes that we need. So we just kind of want direction as to how the council wants to go, which one they'd like to tackle first for discussion. And
Yeah,
that's
so
kinda why
if
we
I
brought
could,
it back
Mr.
this
Mayor.
way.
Well, let me just, before you say whatever you're going to say, let me just say for the public that, so that what came out of the Alcohol Ordinance Review and Rewrite Committee was not a recommendation. It was a multiple choice of, I think it was 4 different things that could be done, approaches that could be taken. And so what city clerk is referring to is the pieces such as removal of the caps, how that is dealt with respect to future fees for legacy owners. There's things in there on right of first refusal for sale of legacy licenses and so forth. So there are some different pieces to it so that everybody's clear on why this is not just a slam dunk, if you will. Go ahead,
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessing.
Yeah, so if I could, just to the city clerk's point, I see that we've got a couple owners here tonight. If they came expecting us to hear from them, I would like to do that, because I want to make sure that we're not missing some expectation they had. So I'm with you that there's parts of this discussion that are sort of, hey, let's fix some language, let's get some stuff cleaned up, and then there's the big juicy questions, right? And I can see the wisdom in splitting those apart. So I'm absolutely on board with that. But I want to make sure that if there are those that wanted to be heard, that they can. If we want to do that at another session, I'm okay with that, but I want to make sure that works for them.
Okay. I have no quarrel with any of that. I guess, Alderman Fuller, do you have something?
I was just going to ask, do we need to make a motion to open a public hearing then, for them to allow them to speak?
Yeah, I would make that motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded that we open the floor for a public hearing to hear from the license holders or whoever would like to speak on this issue. Is there any discussion? If not, call the roll.
Blessum?
Yes.
Fuller?
Yes.
I'm sorry, okay.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson? Pittner?
Yes.
Samuelson?
Yes.
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes. Okay, so that passed. So we are now in a public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak on the alcohol ordinance rewrite recommendations, here's your opportunity. Anybody who wishes to speak on the
Travis Zablotny, resident of Minot. Obviously not a bar owner. Don't have a dog in that fight, but I am a taxpayer. I'm one that believes in capitalism, one that believes in minimal interference from governments, and myself and more than one councilman have had many conversations about this. I asked the former city manager what the purpose in a liquor license was, why the city needed it. His response was, well, we need a way to enforce certain things within the environment of a bar, like age verification and hours and the types of activities that go on in a bar. And my response to him was, what about the law? Don't we have laws that state these requirements? Why don't we just enforce the law? Why do we need a license and a requirement? From my perspective, all these types of things do are minimize competition. I understand that that's important for some, but at the end of the day, the strong will survive. And if you're not able to do that, you better look at the model of your business and understand how you survive in a model of competition. And nobody else, almost nobody else, besides the government, enjoys a monopoly through a license. We certainly don't as farmers or many and most other occupations. As far as the fees that have been charged over the years, I want to throw out my opinion as a taxpayer. First and foremost, anyone that has ever paid a fee for a license, no matter what that amount is, came to the city at its inception, maybe not in its transfer, but at least in its inception, and we as taxpayers were paid for those licenses. And took that money and used it somewhere. We owe that money back to the people we took it from in the form of a license. And so I think we step back and we find out what was originally paid for a license, not through a transfer in the market value, but the origination of that license, and use those factors to determine reimbursement. I think license holders should be made whole in some form or another, and this isn't a simple exercise, right? You're gonna have to go through a process of determining how somebody acquired their license, how much they paid, was it a direct acquisition from a city, were they grandfathered in, and review those things and make folks whole. And I think that needs to be cash. And for anybody that says, well, where's the money gonna come from? It's gonna come from the same place that it went to at some point in time over the last 50 years or whenever the inception of a license came from. But we do need to make these bars whole. But I see no business that the city needs, and somebody can point out to me why we need a license, please do. I haven't had anybody give me a legitimate reason yet today. I stand for any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Well, I can answer your question that you just said. License for alcohol. Alcohol is a regulated substance. That's why you need a license for it. It's regulated. It's regulated in America. Never mind. Okay, first of all, this is a hot point for me, and we know that. So, first of all, I am sick of people telling me that we're afraid of competition. Sick of it, really. And you know why I'm sick of it? Every person that owns these licenses went through the pandemic. You shut us down for three months. And then we were opened, again, very regulatory. So there's nobody here afraid of competition. No one. Make it a level playing field. That's all we're asking. It's a level playing field. If I've spent $200,000 to get a license and build my business, and I've been building my business for 8 years, and I work my business. I'm in there every day, cleaning the toilets, ordering the food, making the things. I'm in there every day. So don't tell me I'm afraid of competition. Tired of it. These people work hard. You don't own a bar owns you. You work every day. Anybody here that's in business, if you're successful in that business, you work it. You work it. So please stop telling me the strong will survive, because the strong have survived. If you want to open a business, do what everybody else has done. Put the time, energy, and effort. Time, energy, and determination. So I'm sorry. What you're doing is wrong. Bottom line. Full stop. You're trying to take away something that I have worked very hard for. And I don't got mom and daddy's money behind me, and I don't got a whole bunch of people behind me doing that. I work it. I have invested every penny that I've made back into my businesses. And I pay taxes. And I'm sure I probably pay more taxes than you. I don't know what you do. But I pay taxes. So I would say think twice or 3 times or 4 times. You're taking away people's livelihoods. And if people want to do business like we've all done business. I'm not a good old bully. I'm not.
Morning, Mayor, council members. I'm Deb Hopworth with the Pringle & Harrickson Law Firm, and I represent what is the Magic City Retail Beverages Dealers, which consists of about 14 retail liquor licensees here in the city of Minot. So I just want to get up here and clarify what the question is. If the question is whether we split the other ordinances with the liquor, with the issue of the caps on that retail liquor licensee issue, we don't have an issue with that, if that's what the issue is. My client's position is, as it's always been, to leave those caps in place. But we're certainly not opposed to splitting these issues so that some of this can move forward. Does anyone have any particular questions? I mean, is that what your question is, sir?
Yeah, I mean, there are, the caps question is one piece of it, obviously, and then there's some other miscellaneous things in the rule book that would be tweaked, in the draft. So, but I think everybody recognizes that removing the caps is a core issue.
Yeah, it's the lightning rod of the
for your
issue.
clients.
Yes, and so we don't oppose splitting those, so.
If I can just expound on that, yeah, the committee did a lot of work outside of the cap issue. So I think it's taking all the work that the committee did, whether it was outdoor dining, whether it was, compliancy checks, infractions, fines and fees, dealing with some of those. We want to put those issues aside so council can have a discussion on those, and then the cap issue. Keep it separate so it doesn't minimize the rest of the work that the committee did.
Yeah, and my clients don't have any opposition to doing it in that manner.
Okay, thank you for
Yep.
letting us know that. Thank you. Still a public hearing about the alcohol ordinance revisions.
And Mayor Janser, if I may, part of the staff position on that is that the bulk of the ordinance, everything else outside of the cap, could probably move at a little faster clip. There's still some issues we have to work out with like individuals like Minot State and some of the other more like specialty licenses, but we think that we could probably move this discussion along at a little faster pace if we aren't clouding it with this larger discussion of the cap. So that would be staff's preference, if we could sever these two issues and move the rest of the ordinance along in a more traditional fashion, presented at first reading and then a second reading and then pass it and have that be effective, and then kind of reserve this issue for the cap to give it the discussion that typically arises in these circumstances before the council.
Okay, so City Attorney, would you be ready to bring that back to us as a first reading document next meeting, perhaps then?
Potentially, we've got a couple more meetings to schedule with some of the licensed stakeholders, namely Minot State and the Park District,
Okay.
just to shore up some of their requests.
Okay, but if not, next meeting soon,
Yes,
within,
yep.
okay. All right, that helps. Yep. We're still in a public hearing regarding the revision of the alcohol licenses.
Mayor Janser, council members, has there been thought given to if their cap is removed and there can be a number of licenses, how is it that the city is going to be policed if it's spanned out or the number increases? How are you going to keep the city safe with police or first responders? Has that been considered?
Go ahead, Alderman Pittner.
If I may
You
just-
served on the committee.
So
or
on
you
the committee,
right?
we did have, at the time, Chief Klug and then Dale Plessis did serve on the committee to give the perspective of policing if this would arise, or if we felt like this would parlay, or other communities that have expanded or removed their cap, whether they saw an uptick in alcohol-related incidents, whether it came, how many more establishments were opened if a capper was removed. So there were a number of factors, and we did have public safety as a part of that conversation.
So then it would likely then increase the cost of the city then to have these additional licenses.
That was never quantified within our discussions, and we found no evidence to suggest that it would parlay into something like that. I don't have a crystal ball, though, so, but it was never in other communities that we looked, like Grand Forks removed their cap. They didn't see a direct correlation in additional establishments, nor an increase in alcohol-related crimes.
Thank you.
We're still in a public hearing related to the recommended rewrite of the alcohol ordinances.
Mr. Mayor and the council, I would like to know, it's come to my attention that there was an outside lawyer hired to check other cities and what their ordinances were. Is that correct?
I'll look to legal and what the agreement was.
So the council secured outside counsel to advise as to the legality of removing the license cap and what that particular litigation could look like. So council has released that memo. That memo is public.
Okay,
So
well, how much
any-
was that was spent, do you know, off the top of your head?
I'd have to, it's been a while since I've looked
Sorry.
at the bill, but we can get that information if that's something that you'd like.
So, honestly, that thing right there is why I wanted to be on council. Because we can't balance our budget, but we can set aside $100,000 to research stuff like this.
I will say it was definitely not $100,000.
Oh, I know, but I know
on
that there's $100,000 set aside because you're a busy lady and you can't do everything. And so there's $100,000 set aside. So I'd like to know how much of that $100,000 of my tax money that I gave to the city was used to research and figure out how to take my license away from me.
Anyone else wish to comment in this public hearing? I see no one coming forward. Therefore, Alderman Blessum,
I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
moved by Alderman Blessum, seconded by Alderman Fuller. Any discussion? All those in favor signify, or do you want to?
Doesn't matter.
Signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, so we're back to the discussion here at the dais on what we want to do with these recommendations. Is there, Alderman Pittner?
I guess I'll look to Attorney Solheim. Are you thinking if we could we bring the changes within the ordinance outside of the cap back at our next meeting?
That might be a bit quick with
Okay.
the new agenda
Okay.
requirements, because I think we'd have to have the memo and everything finalized by the middle of next week. So, I mean, I'd ask for a month at least for time
Okay.
for our stakeholders to contact their boards.
Second meeting in October, does that seem appropriate?
I think so.
To give time to allow, and
think so.
if something's ready before that, if the ordinance changes are ready prior, we can bring it separate. So I guess I would make a motion that staff divide these and bring these as two individual items. One, the ordinance changes outside of the cap, and then the cap issue itself at our second meeting in October or sooner, if those other changes are ready.
And so,
Second that, Mark.
apologize. And so just so everyone's clear as to how I'm thinking that we'll do that, is we'll present a first draft of the ordinance and we'll just leave the cap language in there as is. So if there is approval on first reading, second reading, nothing will happen with the cap language in those first and second readings. And then if the council does decide it wants to move forward with a change of some nature, we'll do that at a different date.
Yep, and that's fine, and I guess I would just be clear, it'll be a public hearing, correct, at those ordinance changes, for those items?
If the council so desires.
Okay, I would like it to be I would amend my motion to make it a public hearing.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, a friendly to what the city attorney just said, I'm a little concerned actually that we're leaving the second part just open-ended. I would like to see those as two separate ordinance discussions so that we work our way through and finish it, okay? Whether, again, I'm not saying anything about the outcome, but I would like to see two agenda items, one for these other pieces and one directly related to that. It doesn't mean we're gonna solve it that night, but I don't wanna just say, yeah, at some point, we're gonna look at it. I want these guys, regardless of the outcome, to know the answer. I don't want it hanging. that's a
Yep,
friendly
no, and
to
that's
bring
and
both?
that's my intention,
Okay.
I guess, to bring them both.
Because that was not what you had said, Steph. You had said, we'll solve this one, but not do the other part.
No. My intention is to have the two separate items as described by Alderman Pittner. But the larger conversation will come in the form of an ordinance, and the ordinance language pertaining to the cap will remain as its existing language. So it wouldn't resolve anything necessarily. It's just if the rest of the ordinance changes are agreeable to council and you want to make them, those changes could be approved on first reading. But the cap itself wouldn't change.
So if I could, Mr. Mayor, to be clear, on the October, what would it be? I think it's the 6th, which would make it the 20th. On the October 20th meeting, we will have an agenda item, which is the non-cap related ordinance changes as a first reading on that ordinance.
Yes, because we would present them as a comprehensive change to the whole chapter. So it would be a rewrite of the chapter. You're going to see a new chapter. Substantively, it's very similar, but some of the ordinances are restructured, like the license structure. But the language relating to the cap, we would leave the existing language in that first reading.
That item, okay.
Yes.
Then, a second agenda item on the October 20th meeting is a second ordinance, which is adjusting the cap language, again with Mr. Black's as well as Mr. Pittner's alternatives as ordinance alternatives. That's also a first reading for that ordinance.
If the council even moves to approve it on first reading.
And exactly, that's my whole point, but we will have first readings on both ordinance adjustments on the October 20th meeting.
We can definitely structure it that way. My concern is if the second item doesn't change, like if it's, like we could insert the cap language into the second reading of the first item. So we could do it that way if it seems like there's a consensus amongst the council to move them forward at the same clip. But I think that the discussion needs to happen first on whether or not the council even wants to move forward with a cap discussion in order to get there.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, I think we've had that discussion. That's my opinion. And we are at a point where we need to not put these people through this anymore. So I think we need to have it on an agenda where it's discussed as an actual real change, and we debate it and we decide. That's my opinion. That's why I'm asking for two items with two ordinance first readings, one that would do the other changes, one that would do this change.
So this, and if I may, the second item will then have 3 options pertaining to the cap. So that's what the council would be considering then, is no change, what's been referred to as the Black proposal, and what's been referred to as the Pittner proposal. So we'd have 3 options for the council to consider on the second item that pertains to removal of the cap.
Correct. That's my intent anyway, but it's Paul's motion.
Are
Yes,
you,
no,
are
and
you
that's my
movers
intent. That
and
was-
seconds all okay
That was my
with all of it?
intention all along, was to
That's Fuller
provide some
seconded.
finality to this,
Yep.
to move it forward,
And-
independent of each other,
Yep,
but
would have-
at the same meeting.
Yep, I'd be happy to do that.
Rob, you were the second, so he would have to
Oh,
agree
Rob
to
was,
that.
okay.
Again, I'm fine with it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second as clarified. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none,
Mark, sorry.
sorry, Alderman Fuller.
This might be a little early. Like, I know we're gonna have this big discussion down the road, but I wanna read a couple things to us council members here. Because the biggest thing that we're talking about here is, do these liquor licenses hold value? And if they do, and we uncap them, how do we compensate the liquor license owners, right? So I wanna read 2 things, and I'm gonna tell you guys where it comes from. So the first one says, it could be added that the only effective way that I am aware of whereby the council could really and truly destroy any property right in a liquor license would be to remove the numerical limitation on that liquor license. It is only this numerical limitation which gives any property value to the liquor license, and then only the extent that the market demand for the liquor license exceeds the available number. 2, the Citizens Committee recognized that creating a property right in the liquor license is a deterrent to potential bad conduct by license holder, because the licensees would be reluctant to jeopardize their licenses because they would lose property value and money. So that was from one of our city attorneys in 1987 when they implemented these ordinances. They right there put value on our liquor licenses. 2016, when it came back up again under this council, and Steph, I don't know if you were the attorney of record at that time or not, I apologize. Our city attorney spoke to the Grand Forks city attorney. Grand Forks removed all cap language from their ordinance in 1993. Before the cap was removed, Grand Forks' ordinance specifically stated that the licensees do not have a property interest in the license. This is the opposite of what Minot ordinance currently states. So whether we want to admit it or not, as a city, and we have two city attorneys from the city that have written this, they said we created value in these licenses. So I think to Mr. Zablotny's point, we have to figure out a way, if we're going to remove this cap, to compensate these liquor license holders and owners that is cash or something else, which is what they put into it, rather than, giving them fees over the next 20 years that they don't have to pay. Because if somebody came to me and said, hey, you know what, your property's worth $500,000, but we're going to drop it to $300,000 and you don't have to pay property tax for 5 years, I'm not going to think that's a pretty fair deal. I'm going to probably move out of Minot because you just took half of the value of my home. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out because that is what is at heart here, is do these licenses hold value? We as a city have said they do. Sorry.
City Attorney.
And so Alderman Fuller, members of the council, one thing that I think is really important to keep in purview here is that liquor licenses themselves are valuable not just because they're transferable, but because they generate revenue. So if the bank has a lien on a liquor license, they foreclose, they step into the shoes of the prior license holder, they have ability to generate revenue by operating underneath that license. Takings claims are focused on the ability to operate under a license, not on the value of being able to sell it to a third party. So that's, when we talk about value, it can arise in different contexts. And so that's something that I think is really important to keep in mind moving forward through this conversation.
Alderman Fuller.
Okay, Steph. And so to your point then, I guess my question would be, when we as a city or a community said, hey, we're limiting them at this amount, in addition to saying, hey, they're transferable and we want to make sure there's a hook there in case somebody does something bad where we can take it away. So when we said we're only going to allow this many based on population, didn't we say it doesn't matter if you can create revenue off them? We've capped them and we've limited them, so they're going to be worth what people will pay for them, not what you can make off of them.
That's not how I interpreted the documents that you're referencing in front of you, but I also haven't seen all the documents that are in front of you, so I'd have to actually look at them in order to give advice on them.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. So we have
Yeah, maybe I should read it just to make sure we're all on the same page. Direct staff to bring 2 agenda items separating the ordinance as discussed to the October 20th, 2025 regular city council meeting.
Okay, everybody clear? All right, then we've had good discussion on this, let's vote.
Pittner,
Yes.
Samuelson,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Fuller,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson. Motion passed.
Okay, so we have a way forward on that. Item 8.2 is the public safety sales tax discussion, and I guess who's kicking this off? Is it Alderman Pittner? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jen, I think we'll pull up the PowerPoint that I emailed to her here, so I'll wait for that to get up. And again, I asked for this discussion tonight for public safety funding. I just put together a presentation that outlines the differences between 2 of the proposals that we've heard. One reallocating half-cent sales tax, and we've begun to see a pretty good deal of discussion on social media about it. So just wanted to kind of run through some of the options. So we were presented with a proposal to divert, next slide, I forgot I don't have a remote. So we were presented with a proposal to divert existing sales tax into police and fire. It was voted down. This wasn't because I felt like we didn't support public safety or valued economic development more. I personally voted against it because I wasn't informed on the consequences. And as one resident put it on social media, if you have an idea, do the homework, bring it forward. Don't ask somebody to do the homework for you. So I did the work and I presented it tonight. Next slide, please. So first proposal that I want to go over is Proposal A. This is a new half-cent sales tax, which we asked for. I directed staff to bring back to council. So Proposal A creates about $6 million annually in additional sales tax revenue. It provides immediate relief by covering $3.44 million in police and fire non-salary costs, but it also provides future relief, setting aside $2.56 million for capital projects, avoiding new debt. Importantly, it preserves our existing commitments to economic development, our improvement portions of that half cent, as well as the property tax buy down of $1.7 million. And just for the record, I did present this PowerPoint to the finance director, who gave me a thumbs up that my numbers are on point. So this slide here shows the offset. And using U.S. Census data to calculate the impacts of a new half-cent sales tax, the sales tax increase adds about $120 a year to the average household in Minot. But the property tax relief takes the pressure off the levy for a $309,000 home, which is the average price of a single-family home in Minot last year. That's about $185 in annual savings. So the net impact is roughly neutral, but often a slight savings, especially since 30% of our sales tax is paid for individuals outside of Ward County. Now, Proposal B reallocates 50% of the first penny. Thank you, Jen. Proposal B doesn't add a single new dollar to police or fire. It simply shifts existing funds and existing funding. That means cutting $1.9 billion in economic development, $1.75 million in levy relief, which is already there, and is really not a net gain, and then $4.6 million in infrastructure projects that comes out of that half cent. So if we want to keep those projects, it means that $4.6 million in property tax levy, in a $4.6 million property tax levy increase in order to keep those projects funded. Next slide, please. So of those projects, what's at risk under the reallocation? So here's a list of what would be cut or delayed under Proposal B. These are not small items. They include traffic signal replacement, safe routes to schools, sidewalks, street improvements to the tune of $1.5 million, transit system improvements, a library roof, which is in the first of a 3-year phased project, which, to my knowledge, we're already having issues with. These are community priorities that we would lose if we shift sales tax away from the improvements portion. Another one I want to highlight in here, which again, I know there's been talk of getting rid of citizen satisfaction surveys or relying on other data to move these projects. 21st Avenue Northwest Sidewalk, Phase 1, that's the soccer complex. We hear about that annually. Every time soccer season kicks up, when you have 1,200 families utilizing that corridor and utilizing that area, not on top of the new school up there that provides more traffic, this is a safety issue. There are improvements to make this a safer crossing, a safer corridor in our community. Next slide, please. So again, the clear difference: Proposal A creates new money, relieves the levy today, protects against future levy increases, and preserves community improvements and community investments. Proposal B creates no new money, shifts funds, cuts programs and infrastructure projects, and requires a levy increase in order to keep the improvements in place. And in reality, it shifts public safety into a variable revenue source in sales tax. We saw in 2018, when I first got on council, we had relied heavily to subsidize our budget with sales tax, heavily. And then when the boom went away and the bust happened, we had to shift individual costs back into the property taxes. So again, next slide, please. The conclusion, Proposal A. I think these conversations are very important to fully explore all options. I'm not advocating for one or the other at this point. I want individuals, I want the public, I want staff, I want us up here to look at all of these, the intended, the unintended consequences of what either proposal would be. And here's the reality: between simply reallocating existing sales tax dollars or approving a new one, only one proposal actually relieves property taxes, protects against future levy increases, and preserves investments we've already made into our community. In conclusion, kind of going through this exercise, if you will, working with city staff and taking a deeper dive into this sales tax portion of the budget. One of the Facebook comments also said out there, placing this on the ballot would be making the citizens the bad guys, and maybe there's some truth to that. To the point that if we're trending away from citizen satisfaction surveys, then maybe this is a council that this council may need to be more willing to make tough, sometimes unpopular decisions without always passing the responsibility to the public. So sitting up here, we're elected to make hard decisions, weighing trade-offs and doing what's best for Minot, and especially in this case, public safety long-term, short and long-term. So as we look at ballot language for next year's election, to come in front of this council, I would also like to direct staff to present the option to oppose this directly at the council level and what that would look like. And again, that's the conclusion of my PowerPoint. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, but again, there's more to this, and there's more improvements, there's more projects, safe routes to school projects, sidewalks around our schools. You know, we talk about sidewalks tonight. We make developers put in sidewalks, but if we're not willing to hold that same standard for our city and for our communities today, I don't think it's fair. And again, I just wanted to put this out there so that when we do see this conversation kick up, which it will, as we have more discussions at the council level, I want to make sure all the facts are out there. I want to make sure all of the alternatives are fully weighed, and we look at all the options. So,
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessum.
So just a few things to follow up on with that. I do have a question, maybe for Dave, if you don't mind heading up, Dave. But I guess my starting point will be, as I've said multiple times, I don't believe we have a revenue problem in this city. I don't believe we have a revenue problem at any level of government that I've ever seen. It's not that we have too little money coming in. And so I'll just pause there because I got Dave up here. Dave, I've seen multiple times now come through discussions and presentations that the dollars that would come from a new sales tax would go to non-salary expenses in the police department and the fire department. Is there something inherent to those types of expenses that require that? Is there any reason why we wouldn't pay salaries out of sales tax?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, that was just part of the proposal. There's no requirement with any new sales tax. It could be used for whatever.
Okay.
Whatever.
So just as a
purpose.
follow-up, if I could, Dave, so when the dollars are collected on the sales tax, and let's say we reallocate and there's 6 to 6.5 million, whatever the number is, that moves over to the general fund, essentially, is what it's going to do. And yes, we're earmarking it for police and fire. Police and fire are, what, 20 million a year, something like that? If you bring all the salaries and everything we do, we will never touch that with a half cent, ever. We'll always have more to pay for, which today is being paid out of the general fund, which is primarily property tax. And the other part of it is, once we start to go do improvements, those improvements can be funded right out of the general fund just like they are now. Some of them. The fact that we're diverting the sales tax dollars from the second half of the first penny into the general fund means we can build the sidewalks on 21st Avenue. It's all available. Any other funding source that we want. The reason we put things in the general fund is because they literally can be used for just about anything. Correct?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, that is correct. I think the point here is that those sales tax dollars are already being used to fund those projects that would otherwise be funded through the general fund. It is being transferred to the general fund to fund the street improvements, the traffic signals, the striping, the other items that are included there. So I think the point is, if you reallocate that and earmark it specifically for police and fire, you've now created a void where you either have to scrap those other projects or fund them with another mechanism. And if that's property tax, you have exchanged one funding mechanism for another, and you haven't changed the needle or moved the needle at all.
No, if I could continue. I disagree with the way the decision-making happens on council. I think that's the difference that we've got. When we're looking at it as sales tax dollars, and economic development dollars are the easiest ones to talk about. We just had an agenda item tonight on signs, and I'll congratulate my colleagues, we went in the right direction with that. But those dollars would be nowhere near the top of the list from a general fund funding perspective in our normal budgeting. The only reason they're even a question for us to talk about is because they've got a funky funding source that comes in through sales tax to start with. It's the only reason it's even a discussion. We're sitting up here looking at a $14 million expense coming on the police department. I'm hoping we can whittle that down a bit, but we're comparing that to facade dollars right now. Like, if we pass that through the general fund instead, which is what that would do, we can still make the same decision. We could still fund a facade program, but if we do it out of general fund dollars, now we've got an apples to apples comparison. There's a fundamental difference in the council decision-making when we don't have the source of the funds starting in sales tax. And that's why for me, unless somebody can tell me that we've truly got a revenue problem, I will never support additional tax. Why would we go that direction? Why would we, again, back to the numbers that the alderman brought forward, why would we say to those that, I think by your own admission over time, Paul, those that can least afford it, sales tax is the most regressive tax we have. We hurt the people that can least afford to pay for these things when we use sales tax to do them. If you give me the choice of sales tax versus property tax, and it's literally that and something we're doing, fine, I can have the discussion, but adding is nuts. Don't put it on the back of people making 25 grand a year and tell them to pay for it when they're buying their kids' school clothes. That's not how this should work. This, to me, is fundamentally flawed because it's taking the assumption that we've decided we need more revenue, that we could just fix our budget woes if we could just get more money in from the people. No. Let's fix the fiscal house, then we can talk about the revenue side. Right now, we're spending too much, and until we fix that, I'm not looking at new taxes.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Fuller.
And I don't know if this is for Dave or maybe Lance. The numbers went by kind of fast, but I saw in there that we did $11 million this year in road maintenance, right? Or that was street replacement and everything, right, Lance? We said you guys couldn't really handle more than 11 million. Is that, that was what we voted on last year. And now in here it says we did another $1.5 million out of the improvements category. So the 11 million that we gave them for street maintenance, is there $1.5 million left in their budget that hasn't been used, or are these two different things? Because $1.5 million that we used, street improvements, right? That's the same thing that we're talking about with the road maintenance, or am I two different things here, Lance?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Fuller, what I can speak to is capacity of our staff. And at the beginning of the budget process, I proposed us going up to 13 million, and that would be about the absolute maximum that we could do.
Okay.
Right now, we're at 11.
Yeah.
Got reduced to 12, and now I think the proposals is back to 11 where we're at today.
Right. But I guess what I'm asking is, these numbers that are up here, we used 1.5 million out of our sales tax pennies for street improvements. Now, was these numbers right here, Paul, were they 24 or are they 25s?
These are 25s.
Okay, so we budgeted $11 million to Lance in 25 for street improvements and road maintenance. And then we paid another $1.5 million out of out of the improvement section of that sales tax penny. What I guess my question would be, Lance told us they could do 11, so they did the 11 that we gave them the money for, and then there was another $1.5 million that was taken out. Where did that go? Did you guys do that, or is that some other street maintenance thing? Because if that was funded to Lance, shouldn't there be $1.5 million left in his budget for road and streets?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, the total was $11 million. So the amount that's coming from sales tax is the funding mechanism to fund the $11 million. So that is just transferred to the general fund to pay a portion of that $11 million.
So the road stuff doesn't come from enterprise funds?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Blessum, or Alderman Fuller, no, it's generally, it's a general fund expenditure, but we use a combination of funding to make up that $11 million. Some of it is property tax, some of it can be Hub City dollars, in this case, some of it is sales tax. So the revenue side of it, or the funding, is a variety of sources. Otherwise, all of that money would be falling on property taxes.
Fair enough. I was just trying to figure out if this was above and beyond, or if this was a portion of that 11. So thank you.
It's all included in the $11 million. It's not cumulative.
Okay. Alderman Samuelson.
So I agree with Mike. We don't have a revenue problem. And we're gonna just tax people so we get $6.5 million because we think that that's gonna solve some problem. We need to get our spending under control, and all the numbers that are shown up here, just because we reallocate a 0.5 cent sales tax does not mean we can't do any of this stuff here. It's just setting priorities again. on what we're gonna spend it on. To have more revenue that the city doesn't need, there's no way that I'm ever gonna support that.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, when we talk about reallocating sales tax, this is an unintended consequence of placing this reallocating those funds. We do have infrastructure projects within here, yes, we can do these things still. And when it comes to priorities, these are infrastructure projects that need to happen, and if they're not paid through sales tax, they're paid through by the mill levy. Your taxes go up. And if you pay for it out of the sales tax still, that's less money that we were presented with giving this to public safety. That doesn't do anything for them. It doesn't fix the roof, rather. Well, I guess warranty work will. But again, we were faced with a $14 million bill of a renovation. Where does that money come from? Maybe it comes from reserves. Maybe there's a mix of these revenue streams. But I'm not going to say because other communities do it, we have to do it too. But other communities are seeing those are the pressures that they're being faced with. And I think looking at all of the options and having all of the information so that the 1,200 soccer families can come and say, I'm not going to get sidewalks. I'm not going to get a safer intersection at 21st Avenue, safe routes to school, Lewis and Clark. My kids are going to have to walk to school in the streets. My $1.5 million is being cut from the street budget for those projects that we want to do. The library roof that's already having issues is now going to be defunct. I mean, again, these are just discussions that I think we have to have. These are facts and numbers that we all have to consider when making these decisions of whether we're reallocating, implementing new, or doing nothing at all. If we're going to go down one road, I think we should look at all of them. And that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm putting this out here for.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Alderman Blessing.
So actually, the list that we have up here on the screen, which I guess is at risk if we're bringing the money over, these are still my priorities. I've safe routes to school. I'm not a fan of that one. I just think it's kind of a goofy one. But regardless, the rest, I'm pretty happy with that list, and I think we'd probably go get them done. We'd pay for them directly out of the general fund. You know what would be on the chopping block? And that's really what all this is about in the end. What all this is about the 15% that's being allocated for economic development. That's it. That's what the whole thing's about. Because all of those other funds are already transferring through the general fund. The whole rest of it, the other 35% are coming in through improvements, or it's coming in through direct property tax relief. It's already being transferred to the general fund and spent on all of these types of projects in the first place. So we're really talking about the 15% with economic development. And right now, what we're doing with that money is we are paying to help business owners in downtown fix up the fronts of their buildings when we've got other priorities that I think the dollars could be used better for. And if we can make the case that those meet the same level of priority that they've had up until this point, we can still do them out of the general fund. The dollars are still there. To me, this is very simple. In fact, moving the dollars to the general fund gives us more flexibility, not less. It gives us more. Right now, when we allocate those dollars directly on the economic development side, that $2.2 million-ish that we spend every year right now, we got to kind of figure out where to spend it. So we do signage projects. We do wayfinding. We do facade programs. Right now, we're sending a lot of money over to Service Basin Planning Council for state matching funds. Now, the former city manager really liked that program, and I'm not necessarily in disagreement with him. Those are good things that are working with local banks and local small businesses on Bank of North Dakota programs. I mean, if you're really going to figure out a way to spend it, that one's probably one of the better ones. But at the end of the day, this is all priorities, all of it, every single one of them. And when we elevate those because of their funding source, we're doing a disservice to the people. And so I think, there's arguments to be made for economic development programs, but that's not even the argument we're having. Right now, we're trying to use stuff like this to say, well, no, you're going to have to give this up if we reallocate. I don't know if we do. I feel pretty strongly about 21st Avenue. I've heard a lot of people talk to me about that we need to make the crossing safer. We know that. I've talked to Stefan about it. We had questions about, 6-8 months ago. It's programmed, it's set, we're headed that direction. We just got to follow through. That's not the choice I'm going to make. I don't think any of us would. So, Mr. Mayor, I guess at this point, we're discussing. We haven't, there's no motion, and so we've got to work our way there. I'm not sure where we want to go tonight, and I'll leave that to you a little bit, Paul, but.
No, and again, I'll respond to that a little bit. Again, I agree with this is economic development. But when this conversation was presented to us on August 4th, the day before an election, and weaponized on Facebook and social media, this was saying we don't care about public safety. Because this half a cent could go towards public safety. You want to talk about facade improvement program, you got about $200,000 in this year's recommended president's budget that would go towards public safety. This is about killing economic development. And I agree with you, Mike. I've said that from the very get-go. It wasn't on August 4th. It was about trying to do something for public safety. And you know darn well that was weaponized and put out there under this shell game that was, we got to do this to support public safety. They can't pay for PPE. They can't pay for their protective gear. And here we are, looking at ways, because that's what was presented to me, was we need to do more for public safety. A half-cent sales tax, is it the right way or the wrong way? I don't know. That's why I asked for it initially to be put on the ballot. Let the people decide. But we also want to get rid of public satisfaction surveys. So I don't know, that if we're going to do that and we're going to go towards the direction of us having to make tough decisions, well, maybe we should impose it. We have the ability to impose this at the council level. Let's have that discussion as well. Let's look at all of the options. So I agree that yes, it's about killing economic, but if we're worried about facade improvement program, we're worried about $200,000. That doesn't do anything for public safety. It doesn't. So again, I'm not prepared to make a motion tonight. I provided direction to staff to bring us the ballot when we get the ballot language. I would like to see this as an alternative to implement this at the council level, and we'll have that discussion then. But again, this doesn't do anything for public safety. If we can delete all these projects and put it towards public safety, because that was the initial proposal. I was told, and there was 3 council members' names that were dragged through the mud as they don't support public safety because of the action they took tonight, to the point of council members getting threatening emails. So I take all of this very seriously, and I want to look at all the options.
Good, Mr. Mayor, if I could respond. All right, I just want to be very clear, because I don't know that Paul intended this to come out exactly that way. That not one of those things had anything whatsoever to do with me. Not one. Not a single one. And so I think in my dealings on council, I've been as above board as I possibly can be. I write as much as I can, a thorough summary of my thoughts after every council meeting to give everybody my thoughts on the individual votes that we take. And I've done that. Now, I realize that those are blanket statements about everything going on, so that's okay. That's fine. At the end of the day, what we're talking about here is, do we have a direction as a council that is focused on finding every way that we can to whittle a little more dollar out of the pocket of our people, of our city? Or do we have a direction that says, hey, we got a great set of staff that did a fabulous job with this budget. Let's roll it forward now and actually bring the gains that we're going to get from that. We've got a real opportunity here, folks. The state set us down a certain path, and along with some other good work that the council did working with staff, we've got some really good stuff moving in the right direction. This possible direction to reallocate these funds doesn't have to stop a darn thing. It comes down to priorities, and I've said that multiple times now tonight. And so I just want to make sure that the public understands that I had no part in any part of tearing anyone down. About the strongest words I think I used was, I will leave it to the public to determine the motivations behind that vote. That was it. I didn't say that you should go send them nasty letters. I didn't say any of those things, nothing of the sort. And so, again, I believe throughout this process, the Economic Development Committee, the different discussions that we've had, I've acted in good faith, and I've gotten myself to the point where I really want to just start matching up the real priorities of this city to the funding sources and the dollars that we have available, because right now we're out of whack by a few $1 million, and that few $1 million is keeping us from getting back to parity with last year's budget. That's where we're at. we've got the opportunity to do that, and we can deliver that for the people, or we can protect the status quo.
Alderman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, we had a lot of conversation about allowing the public to give us their input. And I made a statement that the public should be informed before they give us their input. Here's the information. Now they have it. I think we'll have a room full and maybe out in the hallway at our next meeting, because people have opinions on this. But now they have informed opinions. And that's what we need to hear. I'm glad that we have this. I don't think that the 7 of us up here now understand what every person in Minot is thinking. But they're going to get an opportunity to come to a public meeting and tell us, and they're going to have the background to understand how they're determining their opinions.
Yeah, to your point, Alderman Olson, I would remind everybody that the meeting on the 15th is the public hearing on the 2026 budget. And I would hope that we're going to have a diverse group of opinions that we hear. Because in some cases, hardly anybody shows up for that. But you know, it's like an election. If very few people show up to the polls, or if it's like a survey poll where it's not statistically valid because it's not random, and you get the opinion of the people who showed up. You don't get the opinion of all the people. So yeah, I would agree with you. I hope that we have a good showing for the meeting on the 15th, and the topic is the 26 budget. So I look forward to that. Any further comments? We've been at this for, I guess, 2.5 hours. Any further comments? If not, we're to item number 9.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.